Canceling engagements. Ongoing knee pain forces Pope Francis to skip events at the Vatican. Solemn anniversary. Remembering the 2019 Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka, which claimed more than 200 lives. Social media circus. How Twitter, under new ownership, may affect free speech and even the pro-life movement. And honoring longevity. A Catholic nun in France becomes the world's oldest living person. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on the Feast of Our Lady of Good Counsel. I'm Tracy Sabol. We begin tonight in Rome, where Pope Francis canceled engagements today as a result of ongoing pain in his knee. A Holy See press office statement says the Holy Father did not attend activities following medical advice. His movements have been visibly affected this year. Pope Francis's condition caused him to cancel a trip to Florence last February and has limited his roles during liturgies. Meanwhile, Pope Francis has named Archbishop Laurent Ulrich as the new Catholic Archbishop of Paris. Ulrich succeeds Archbishop Michel Aupetit, who resigned last December. The Archbishop-elect has been serving the Archdiocese of Lille since 2008. He was first appointed as an archbishop in 2000 by Pope John Paul II. The head of the Spanish Bishops' Conference is expressing pain and contrition for sexual abuse committed by members of the Church. Spain is one of several European nations who have commissioned an independent panel to investigate past cases. Meantime, back here in Washington, the White House announces Vice President Kamala Harris has tested positive for COVID-19. White House correspondent Owen Jensen has more tonight.
Tracy, we're told that Vice President Kamala Harris, who is fully boosted against COVID-19, is not experiencing any symptoms. Now, we're also told that due to their recent respective travel schedules, the Vice President is not considered a close contact of President Joe Biden or the First Lady.
The White House says Vice President Kamala Harris tested positive on both the rapid and PCR tests. She's now isolating at her residence, but will continue to work remotely. The news comes on the same day the Biden administration makes a push to expand COVID-19 treatments.
Treatments are really the next phase of this pandemic, where we have to make these treatments, these highly effective treatments, widely available.
Treatments including Pfizer's antiviral Paxlovid, of which there is now ample supply. The goal now, get it out to every pharmacy and to educate doctors and patients.
We want to make this therapeutic widely available to all Americans.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden said today that America is a nation of laws, of second chances, of redemption and rehabilitation.
President Biden is pardoning 3 people during this Second Chance Month, who he says have demonstrated their commitment to rehabilitation. And when he ran for the White House, the president vowed to reduce the number of people incarcerated and called for nonviolent drug offenders to be diverted to drug courts and treatment. Today he writes, I am also commuting the sentences of 75 people who are serving long sentences for nonviolent drug offenses, many of whom have been serving on home confinement during the COVID pandemic, and many of whom would have received a lower sentence if they were charged with the same offense today, thanks to the bipartisan First Step Act.
This is what democracy looks like.
And at the U.S. Supreme Court, justices hearing nearly 2 hours of arguments concerning the contested Remain in Mexico policy. It forces some people seeking asylum in the U.S. to wait in Mexico for their hearings. The Biden administration fighting to end the policy.
Now, Republican-led states have sued to keep the program in place, saying it's helped reduce the flow of people into the United States. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Top Biden administration officials got a first-hand look at the war in Ukraine over the weekend. Today, U.S. lawmakers heard more about the trip from Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with more. Eric?
Well, Tracy, Secretary Blinken testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today, and he told lawmakers that when he was on the train on the way to the capital city of Kyiv, from what he saw, he believes that Ukrainians are in fact winning the war. But he says that's due large in part to the preparations that the U.S. and NATO forces made prior to the invasion.
It was right in front of us. The Ukrainians have won the battle for Kyiv. We started making sure that the Ukrainians had the equipment that they needed to repel a potential Russian aggression way back before the aggression started.
However, the secretary says the challenge now is to sustain that power. During the hearing, lawmakers on both sides agreed Ukraine should have the weapons it needs to win. But in the same breath said it can't go on forever. The secretary says Putin's war is having a direct negative effect on the Russian people and businesses.
Upward of 600 companies have left Russia, including many of the major consumer brands that we all know and are familiar with. Increasingly, Russians are finding the things they thought they could take for granted, they can't.
Last week, the Biden administration announced it would cut red tape for Ukrainians seeking to enter the U.S. on a temporary basis. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops supports the efforts, but says it needs to go further. Quote, this new program does not include authorization for basic services or access to permanent legal status and could unnecessarily strain communities eager to welcome. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul had a heated exchange, bringing up the idea the U.S. is agitating the war and pushing Ukraine to join NATO.
Would President Biden be open to accepting Ukraine as an unaligned neutral nation?
We, Senator, are not going to be more Ukrainian than the Ukrainians. These are decisions for them to make.
Secretary Blinken says the job of the U.S. right now is to continue the fight for Ukraine, but it's also to help strengthen any sort of negotiating that's going to take place. But from what he can tell is that Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, doesn't want to end this war. Tracy?
Well, Eric, I understand President Biden is asking Congress for more aid now for Ukraine. What is the latest there?
That's right. You may recall last March, Congress did pass some aid for Ukraine, some $14 billion, but we are hearing now from sources that much of that money is gone. Currently, right now, the White House is working on a long-term effort to be able to help Ukraine, possibly even rebuild certain cities. Ukraine right now, officials there say that they need another $7 billion a month in order to win the war. And right now, Congress is working on some sort of relief. We'll continue to follow this as it develops. Tracy?
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate that. Well, new details are emerging in Elon Musk's deal to buy social media giant Twitter. The world's richest man is set to pay $44 billion. The Tesla CEO says Twitter is not living up to its potential as a platform for free speech, and he promises to make it better than ever while opening its decision-making to the public. Shares in the company rose by 5% yesterday. And joining us now to discuss is Rachel Beaumard, Senior Policy Director at the Conservative Partnership Institute and Senior Tech Columnist at The Federalist. Rachel, welcome back. Great to see you again. While Twitter's board of directors has accepted Elon Musk's offer, it really isn't a done deal just yet. That said, do you have any idea of what Twitter will look like under Musk's, that is, leadership?
Well, it's a question I think everybody from ourselves to Twitter employees are asking. In a press release yesterday, Musk hinted at the fact that he would like to open source Twitter's algorithm. He would like to ban bots, and he wants to verify every human on the platform. Those three changes alone, I think, would dramatically change the user's experience on Twitter. And I think, opening the algorithm, he said he wants to do it to restore trust in the platform. That's actually something conservatives have been asking for a long time. It would sort of shed a light on how some of these content manipulation decisions are actually made and put to rest or, open up concerns that they're, thumbs are being placed on the scale, as it were, in content moderation decisions. So everything Elon Musk has said points to a more open and robust Twitter, one in which there is a clash and clang of ideas in the public square. But I think he's got an uphill climb to get there. Based on some of the reporting, I don't know that every Twitter employee agrees with him. So it's going to be an interesting couple of days for him as he takes over this company.
Yeah, and as we know, a lot of people have been kicked off of Twitter or shadow banned before, particularly those with conservative voices. Of course, the most notable being President Trump. How do you think the social media giant will treat conservatives, with Elon Musk in control?
Well, Musk has said if he's upsetting, 10% of the left and 10% of the right, he's probably doing it right. I don't know yet, what that means. And I think it's open to interpretation. But he does seem to be committed to the idea of speech as a principle. You heard him say sort of now very famously, he doesn't care about the economics of the platform. He more wants this to be about speech. That would drastically change how Twitter is run, because as we've seen, there is ideological coercion on the platform. All of the content moderation tends to go in one specific ideological direction. Simply changing that will allow a whole host of voices back onto the platform, many of them on the right, many of them pro-life voices who have been censored, for sharing their views on pro-life issues, or social conservatives, talking about specific issues about the transgender ideology in sports or the classroom. So that is, I think if you're a free speech, someone who cares about speech, that is what free speech is. It is speaking, your ideas into the public square, not expecting no pushback at all, but being able to actually speak into the public square. And that seems to be what Musk wants to restore to the platform, which to many of us would be a welcome change. But, of course, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, it sounds like, though, it could be a turning point for the pro-life movement when it comes to being on social media.
I think that's right, because, we've seen their voices suppressed across multiple platforms, not just Twitter. And I think, opening up Twitter to the pro-life voices will put a lot of pressure on some of the other platforms. It will put it into stark relief the extent to which Facebook bans those voices, bans those images and videos from groups like Live Action, Susan P. Anthony list, both of which have been famously censored on Facebook. So if Elon Musk allows those very valid political, moral views back on Twitter, again, it's going to put pressure on some of the other platforms to do the same. So Elon Musk could end up having a downstream effect, a ripple effect on social media writ large, not just Twitter itself.
And Rachel, what do you think, in your opinion, overall, what do you think about Elon Musk taking over Twitter and making these changes to the platform? I mean, how important at all do you think it will be?
So I do think it could end up being tremendously significant. Now, I think a lot of this hinges on what kind of changes Elon Musk is willing to make, how closely he's willing to monitor the platform, if he's willing to make the necessary personnel changes. But I do think it speaks more broadly to the fact, remember, we are also having to sort of beg a billionaire for access to the public square, to the public discourse, which isn't always a good thing, obviously. We shouldn't have to rely on the world's richest man to purchase this platform and make it a bastion of free speech. It was supposed to be that in the first place. So I don't think it necessarily shuts off a lot of the legislative efforts that you're seeing on Capitol Hill to sort of get control of, how these platforms moderate speech in the public square. But I don't want to downplay it. I do think this could be very significant for Twitter if Musk is serious. And, I was dubious at first that he was, but he has taken the steps to show that he is. So you have to hope it continues, for the sake of discourse here in America and across the world.
Yeah, I guess we will see what happens. Rachel, thanks so much for coming on. We always appreciate your insights.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, the UN Secretary General begins a mission for peace during a visit to Moscow. The head of the United Nations is in Moscow. Antonio Guterres is meeting with government officials as part of a 3-day trip to Russia and Ukraine.
Приветствуем вас в Москве.
Dear Your Excellency, dear Secretary General, colleagues, we welcome you to Moscow wholeheartedly.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov welcomed the Secretary General to Russia's capital. The UN chief says he is extremely interested in finding common ground to end the military conflict in Ukraine. He was set to meet later with Russia's president. He then travels to Ukraine. As we mentioned earlier in the newscast, knee pain caused Pope Francis to clear his schedule today. But yesterday, the Holy Father met a delegation from Sri Lanka. They discussed the 3rd anniversary of the deadly Easter bombing. The terror attacks in April 2019 killed 270 people and left around 500 injured. Yesterday, several thousand people attended a mass at the Vatican on the anniversary of the attacks. It was celebrated by Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith. Afterward, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Tannhauser had the opportunity to interview a priest from Sri Lanka who is now living in Rome.
With me is Father Malit, who was there and who is now studying in Rome, but also helped prepare this Mass. Father Malit, could you tell us again, why is it so important to commemorate also these terrible attacks and the victims of those attacks?
Actually, Andreas, as you know, this terror attack came as a huge surprise to the Catholic Church in Sri Lanka. This claimed 270 lives, and this included more than 60 children. And that is why the Catholic Church is still demanding for justice. And this Mass came as a result of that. When His Eminence Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith visited Pope and requested for a Mass to be celebrated in commemoration of 3 years, he readily responded saying yes. So this Mass that we have celebrated is a result of that invitation.
So after 3 years, you say there's still no justice served to the victims of those attacks who lost their loved ones in the rubble of the churches, really?
Unfortunately, yes, because initially, even though the ISIS terror group took the responsibility, it is obvious that this terror group was motivated for some other political or economic gain by a mastermind. So we are still demanding to know who this mastermind is behind this whole episode of terror attack. So still we are waiting for that to be revealed.
And tell me, are people scared? Are Catholics still scared in Sri Lanka that something like this might happen again?
Yes, because we never know. With the volatile situation in Sri Lanka, even right now, we never know whether that attack of that sort would take place, because the security is not still restored, because nobody can be responsible to say that, okay, the Catholic Church or any other religion is still safe in their places of worship still.
And really quickly now, Father, what would you say that the people in the United States, the people in Europe can do to support Catholics in Sri Lanka?
Well, at first we need to pressurize the government to serve justice, and then we need security at our churches, at our places of worship. So these are the two main demands that we want from the government.
And where also the international community can help.
Yeah.
Father, we'll be praying for you, for your very important tasks here in Rome as well, but also for the people in Sri Lanka, for the Catholics there, for security and for justice to be served.
Thank you very much, Andres.
Thank you.
Up next, a French Catholic nun who survived COVID becomes the world's oldest living person. Some breaking pro-life news now. Media reports indicate that the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has issued a ruling this afternoon to dismiss all legal challenges to a disputed provision of the Texas heartbeat law. The ruling affects the enforcement procedure in the law, which permits civil lawsuits in instances of violations. Meantime, a federal judge has temporarily blocked Kentucky's new pro-life law. The measure bans abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy and restricts dispensation of abortion pills. The judge agreed with 2 abortion clinics, which requested clear compliance guidelines. All 3 Christian law students are suing officials from the University of Idaho. The students are members of the Christian Legal Society. They accuse the university of punishing them because of the religious content and viewpoint of their speech. Attorneys from Alliance Defending Freedom filed the lawsuit yesterday. And joining us now is Caleb Dalton, an attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom. Caleb, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it. So can you tell us about the incident that led to this lawsuit? I mean, I understand it started with the Christian students defending the definition of marriage as between one woman and one man.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. Universities are supposed to be the marketplace of ideas where students can engage in debates and exchange ideas, whether they agree or disagree. But that's not happening freely at the University of Idaho. Our clients, Peter, Mark, and Ryan, are members of the Christian Legal Society. And as part of that, they were engaged in a prayer meeting near an event called the Moment of Community, about coming together. And so they were holding a prayer meeting. A student came over and asked them about their beliefs and said, "What do you believe?" Specifically, you mentioned marriage as one of the things that they asked about. And when our clients just shared what their faith was, what they believe, the traditional definition of marriage, for example, that's kind of what kicked off this whole thing, because the student ended up complaining, denouncing the Christian Legal Society at an American Bar Association meeting. And that's fine. You can have freedom of speech right to denounce others, but not to do what the University of Idaho did, which is to go after these Christian students and to issue no contact orders against them, telling them they can't access certain areas of campus or even have contact with students just because a student may disagree with their views.
And Caleb, I know you say this is a case about religious discrimination. Talk to us more about that.
Absolutely. So what's happening here is these particular students, Peter, Mark, and Ryan, are being discriminated against specifically because of their Christian beliefs. They're being told by the university that we are issuing these no contact orders against you, that you don't have the same freedoms that other students do because you expressed your Christian faith on campus. That's not the marketplace of ideas. The First Amendment specifically protects the right of students to speak and also to hold religious beliefs and to express those religious beliefs on campus. And universities should be encouraging students to engage in debate, to engage one another in the marketplace of ideas rather than trying to shut students down, specifically in this case, because of their Christian faith.
And I'm curious, what concerns you the most about this case?
I think one of the most important things to realize here is this is at the University of Idaho Law School. We're talking about students who are going to be the next generation of lawmakers, of policymakers, of attorneys, of business leaders. And it is especially imperative in that context that universities uphold the free expression of ideas. If they teach students instead that it's okay to shut someone down simply because you disagree with them or you may be offended by their idea, then they will then carry those ideas further into society. And if there's anything that is at the core of a free society, it's that ability to engage in expression, to engage in the free exchange of ideas, to be able to speak freely without fear of government punishment.
Caleb, we have a little less than a minute left, but really quickly, what comes next in this case? And also, has there been any response from the University of Idaho?
Yeah, to my knowledge, we have not heard back from the University of Idaho, and we do intend to file what's called a motion for preliminary injunction with the court. That is to ask the court to remove these no contact orders, to restore our clients' First Amendment rights and their ability to access campus and speak freely on campus, just like every other student. And that's what universities should be about. There shouldn't be any need for an injunction in this case, but we will plan to file one if the university doesn't immediately revoke these no contact orders.
All right, Caleb, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today and speaking with us about it. We appreciate it. Caleb Dalton with Alliance Defending Freedom. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Finally tonight, a bittersweet story about the passing of the woman who was the world's oldest person and the resilient French Catholic nun who now holds that distinction. Kei Tanaka of Japan was the world's oldest person. She died on April 19th at the age of 119 in her hometown, where she actually spent her entire life. Now, 118-year-old Sister Andre is the oldest living person. She actually survived coronavirus a year ago to celebrate her birthday on February 11th, the feast of Our Lady of Lourdes. Both women shared a common trait. They both had a sweet tooth. Tanaka loved chocolate, and Sister Andre's favorite dessert is baked Alaska. I like them both. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.